Let's think about what you have when you have true freedom. Now, think about a day off. If you've been working hard and you have a day off and maybe you're lounging there in front of the TV with your socks on, um, it's rest and relaxation, isn't it? It's an enjoyable thing. And when people are talking about freedom, that's really, I believe, what they're talking about. But what happens if you have more and more and more freedom? What happens if you have freedom every day? What happens if, for example, you're unemployed and for a while you have that freedom of rest and relaxation, the alternate thing to working hard, and you might enjoy that bit of unemployment for a while. But there comes a point, and I don't know if you've experienced this yourself, but there comes a point where you start to resent not having something to do. You resent not having something to focus on. There's an interesting phenomenon with retired people, and especially ones that kind of hate the work they do and they can't wait to retire. They quite often die soon after retiring. Funnily enough, that work that they hated so much was giving them a purpose. It was giving them something to focus on. Because the alternative, which is freedom, is actually energy sapping. It's strange, isn't it? You would think that if you had an entire day to yourself and you could do that day after day and just have the day completely free, you would think that that would be an enjoyable experience. And talking from personal experience, for months it can be. But there comes a point at which you start to resent it. Days start to drift by and you achieve nothing. Those of you who work for yourself may have experienced this already, that when you have absolute freedom to do what you want, it's almost a terrifying experience. Now, what if that freedom went on day after day, after day after day, not just for a few months, not just for a few years, not just for a few lifetimes, but for eternity? Wouldn't that get rather boring? Absolute freedom, absolute unlimitedness. Well, that's kind of what our inner beings have to tolerate. They have absolute freedom. They have, well, almost unlimitedness. That unlimitedness is in itself not something that is as nice as you think it is. Let me try and give you an example, because all of this is quite theoretical. So let me try and give you an example. There was a webinar I did recently to do with dealing with overwhelm. And I spoke about this technique called the Pomodoro technique, which is basically doing a task for 25 minutes. You set a clock to do it, or a stopwatch, and then you take a 5-minute break. And then you work for another 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. Now, what's interesting when you start to work that way is those 5-minute breaks become immensely satisfying. And then if you continue to work that way, at the end of the day, you feel incredibly satisfied with what you've achieved, because those breaks have provided some contrast from the work. They've provided some satisfaction. They provided a sense of accomplishment. Yes, you focused during the 25 minutes, but if you had carried on beyond 25 minutes and focused for hours on end, it would get boring and it would just drive you nuts. But having these breaks of freedom, they become immensely satisfying in relation to the limitation of the 25 minutes of focus that you're forced to do. I hope you're starting to get the idea here. If you had a full day of drifting along doing nothing, and I'm talking about months of doing this, not just a day off, that would sap you. It would completely almost turn you into a vegetable. And I know because I've been there. Now, if you haven't experienced this for yourself, you're probably having some doubts about what I'm saying here. But I'm telling you, unlimited freedom really is something you didn't want. And if you extrapolate that to your inner being that lives unlimited lifetimes, you can start to understand why we would focus into this physical reality. Because experiencing limitation is fun.